Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Excuse me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna wazidna bifadlika 'ilman wa ta'liman innaka 'ala kulli shay'in qadir. Okay. So do we have any questions? In which case, just answer a few questions that I've answered before. So the question put to me online, will the hellfire be emptied? So the question is, I would like to know if the hellfire, if the hadith in Kanz al-Ummal, volume 14, number 39505 is authentic. So Kanz al-Ummal is a very, very useful work on hadith. It's called The Treasure of Those Who Strive in Works. And it's a collection of about 40,000 hadith, so this is somewhere near the end. And it's very insignificant because there are many hadith in it that the collection is so vast that there are certain hadith in it that we no longer have any other source for. So sometimes we find a hadith and it's only in this work. It's a very, very useful work. So it says that there will be a day when hell will be empty.
Shukran for your answer. So the answer is hellfire will last forever. So will hellfire be emptied of people? No, it will not. Hellfire, it will last forever. This is an agreed upon tenet of faith. The hadith 39505 in Kanz al-Ummal is, there will come a day when Jahannam will be like dried crops, reddened and completely empty. The source given is Tabarani. So it says, the hadith then, it says Tabarani. It seems like this could be a misprint, and it is another day in which it is completely empty. A similar hadith is found in Khatib Tarikh, the Tarikh of Baghdad, I believe, by Khatib Baghdadi. So he mentions the hadith there, that another day will come in which is completely empty. The editor there's a book called Juz Fihi min Taqa ibn Mardawayhi min Ahadith Tabarani. So Ibn Mardaway, a great muhaddith and author of tafsir, he has a work where he collected certain hadith of Tabarani, and he mentions that hadith from Tabarani. And Badr ibn Abdullah, an editor, states that this hadith has been deemed weak by Al-Haythami and deemed fabricated by Al-Dhahabi, Ibn al-Jawzi, and As-Suyuti. Right? They considered it to be fabricated. So what's the difference between weak and fabricated? Weak means it does not fulfill the conditions of a Sahih hadith. So there's a gap in the chain, the narrators are not super strong, etc. Fabricated is different. Fabricated is we're positively stating that this hadith has been made up. Right? So Al-Haythami is saying, I don't know if the hadith's been made up, but it doesn't fulfill the conditions of a Sahih hadith. It's not sound. It doesn't have that strength that we're looking for. Fabricated means somebody almost 100% made up this hadith. Right? And so this is what Imam Dhahabi says, this is what Ibn al-Jawzi says, and this is what Suyuti says. So this hadith is either a lie or it's very, very likely the Prophet said it. Okay, so we have another question here. So it's not true. Hellfire will last forever. Verse in the Quran, many verses in the Quran. Something that was in the mouth and swallowed while fasting, larger than chickpea. Does it matter if it's swallowed deliberately or not? Is expiation ever needed for that? So Fatima asked a question. Just go back to here. So Fatima asked a question. For something that was in the mouth and swallowed while fasting, larger than the chickpea. So it doesn't matter how big the thing is in fasting. That's irrelevant of the size of a chickpea or not chickpea is in prayer. Does it matter if swallowed deliberately or not? Yes, if you swallow it deliberately, it breaks the fast. If you don't swallow it deliberately, then it doesn't break your fast. Is expiation ever needed for that? If it's done, no, it's not. In the Shafi'i school, there's no expiation for breaking a fast except for breaking a fast intentionally in Ramadan through sexual intercourse specifically. Amr Khan asks, is it blameworthy to break your fast with only water and not eating anything, i.e. water, fasting the rest of the time? Is it blameworthy? Is it offensive? Not that I know of. It's not going to be sunnah. The sunnah is to break your fast with fresh dates. Fresh dates are uncured dates. Right? They're called balah here in Jordan. Where they call them balah. They look yellow, and they are kind of they're kind of crunchy. They're not soft like dates. And if you can't find those, then dates. And if you can't find those, then something naturally sweet. And if you can't find that, then something sweetened, like some kind of like a chocolate or something like that. And if you can't find something like that, then water. So it's khilaf al-awla, meaning you're not doing the sunnah. The sunnah is to break your fast with an odd number of dates. However, if you don't want to do that, for example, because it causes you harm, for example, your doctor says that you can't break your fast with sugar, so you can only have water, and then you can slowly have some starches later on, bit by bit, for example, because of a medical condition, that's fine. But the default is you should break your fast with a few dates, and then you don't have to eat any more than that. So if all you want to do is not eat, then fine. So there's a difference between what we call khilaf al-awla, which means not the sunnah, as opposed to offensive, which is forbidden. right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden it, but there's no threat of a punishment. As opposed to something haram which is forbidden, but there is a threat of a punishment. Right? So he by just drinking water, you're not doing anything forbidden. Allah has not forbidden us to do that. However, the sunnah is to break your fast with dates. Okay, any other questions? So go on to something else. Another question put to me online. The clothes of the people of the land. Could you please advise about what to do in my situation? I do feel embarrassed at times wearing a jubba, right? Wearing a jubba is a kind of a long shirt, a long jacket. And also I am not sure about wearing jeans, even if they are loose, though they may still tighten up. Could you please tell me the ruling about wearing such clothes, as well as the fact that I am young and I wouldn't wear a suit pant style like most older people tend to. So the question is basically, should I wear what people in my country wear, or people of my age and country, or should I wear quote unquote sunnah clothes, like wearing shalwar kameez or wearing a jubba or wearing anything else that's from the clothes of the East? And so the first thing I mentioned is that about clothing is covering yourself. So the first and foremost is covering your nakedness, which is an obligation, and part of this is the covering of the shape and form of the area between your navel and your knee. Clothes that show the shape of this area, like tight emo trousers, are un-Islamic. So for a man to wear tight trousers so you could see the form very clearly of his private parts between navel and knee, like for example biking shorts, that would be offensive. Right? It would be offensive, unless it would definitely cause fitna. Right? And so this, when we say it's un-Islamic, this could mean haram, or could be offensive. So that's one thing is avoid. So one thing is covering your aura. The other thing is avoiding sin. Another almost equally important goal is reducing avoidable attraction from the opposite sex. Showing off one's vanity muscles is forbidden, not just because it constitutes pride, but also because it can be a temptation to some women. There is nothing wrong with sex or sexual attraction in Islam, but it just has its place and time, and is not the stream. Right. So this is in reality, people misunderstand women's dress in Islam. They say, well, women in Islam, women dress like nuns. So when you dress like nun in the street, yeah, because there's a place and time for sexual interaction, and that's not in the street with everybody, right? And that's how unfortunately these things have been. A woman, for example, in the workplace, she dresses in a way that was actually sexually attractive. Why? Because it affects the way that people interact with her. Society has made it that's how you get power, and that's not how it should be, right? That's just kind of very odd and very strange, and that's not normal, right? And so these things are perfectly fine in their place. Self-expression, right? So we all know the maxim, you are what you eat. This is also often true regarding clothes too. But what we choose to buy and wear is a form of self-expression. People dress like they are businessmen because they want to show that they are effective people who achieve. People also dress like they are straight out of Compton or too cool for school. Then that is exactly what they are feeling inside and what they want to be seen as. For this reason, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever drags or wears anything out of pride, Allah will not so much as look at him on the day of rising. Bukhari and Muslim. This applies to how you dress, how you drive, and how you carry yourself in general. So you walk into work and showing off your new watch, showing off your car, showing off your whatever status, whatever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at such a person in Qiyamah. So what should you do? You should, number one, repent, and number two, thank Allah for all these blessings. It's fine to drive a nice car. It's fine to have nice clothes, to buy a nice watch, to have a nice new iPhone that no one else has. But seeing it as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. Message. What you wear is also a message, be it good, bad, or a neutral message. And this is very important. So wherever you are and whichever setting you find yourself, the way you dress sends intended, unintended, intentional and unintentional messages. In the Middle East, for example, wearing a red hat with a white turban usually means I am a religious scholar, so ask me questions. Right? In Jordan, you walk around with a white a red hat with a white turban around it. That means you're a mufti. Right? This will affect the behavior and reactions of those around around such a person, and will affect how their words and actions are received. Right. So the way you dress affects the way you deal with other people. So this is all relevant when thinking about how to dress. This is true for a Muslim in the West, and for this reason, we have to be careful about what exactly the message are that we wish to convey. This is what your friend is talking about. So you hear the questioner is referring to your friend saying, "Why are you dressing like this? Why are you dressing like that?" For example, are you trying to install awe in others, such that they see you as a man of the cloth? Right. There's a thing. So in a Christian in a Christian perspective, a priest or a monk, you dress in a certain way because you want people to understand that you're religious, and that's the relationship you're going to have with them, right? Or are you going to wear shalwar kameez to show that you're foreign and Eastern? Say, I'm about being Eastern. Is that what it's about? Or I want to wear a jubba because I want to be Eastern. Are you trying to lead other Muslims to hold tight to the outward signs of religiosity? So by dressing in this way, are you trying to encourage other people to do outward sunnahs more? Or are you trying to show them that you are more than they? Is this some kind of ego trip? These are all possibilities that you must think about with regards to your own intention and with regards to what effect you might be having on other people. And no one can tell you the best thing to do but yourself. So when you're making this decision, should I go to work wearing a shalwar kameez? Should I go dressed as I don't know, traditional Malaysian clothing, or should I wear a suit? You have to think about these issues. All of these things are relevant. Think about, does it cover my aura? What does it mean to the people in front of me, etc. What does it mean in the dialogue or debate that I'm engaging in that setting? And you notice, for example, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, he will dress in different ways in different settings. Sometimes he's giving a lesson to Tullab al-Ilm and he wears a turban, etc. And other times in his normal setting, he dresses as a normal Westerner, in a normal Westerner in normal clothes that fulfill the conditions we mentioned here. Right? I remember asking Sheikh Hamza, Sheikh Nuh about this question as well. He said there's no such thing as Islamic clothes. There's un-Islamic clothes, i.e. clothes that don't cover your aura properly, clothes that you're wearing to show off, clothes that bespeak of a culture that's not Islamic. There's no such thing as Islamic clothes. There's un-Islamic clothes, but there's no such thing as un-Islamic clothes. See the upshot, wear clean and smart clothes that are concealing of the area between your navel and knee. So this is a problem with a suit and tie, right? Or office clothes. Generally, office clothes for men and women are quite tight, right? Normal clothes that you wear in office are quite tight, and so that's the concerning thing. In a for example university setting, you can kind of get away with wearing a suit and tie that's kind of slightly more casual. So you can kind of wear slightly different, like corduroy, slightly baggy trousers. You can wear different kind of things. So the issue is in the office. Kind of have to try your best. You can't stand out too much. There's a kind of protocol. There's a kind of thing you have to fit to, but try as much as you can to be looser. So you look in the mirror and say, can I see between for a man, for example, between navel and knee, can you see, for example, my thigh or not? Should be a bit careful about that. Particularly with women, from bosom down to the knees, can you see, for example, the form or not? And then choose based on the above discussions whether you should dress Eastern or Western. I know somebody who used to work for Google, I think, and he would wear a jubba every day. But Google is one place, and working in somewhere else another place. Allahu Alam. Whether or not even so, why would you do that? For example, myself, I live in Jordan. Okay, I do not dress as a Jordanian. Now, why? I don't know, because I've just grown up in a semi-hippie culture, and so My parents are kind of from the entrail of the hippie generation. I went to a Waldorf Steiner school, which was kind of a bit out there. And so the idea of just conforming is not really kind of there in my head. And also, I'm not giving da'wah to Jordanians. I'm not here as a da'i. I dress in some clothes that would fit in to Jordan sometimes, and other times not. Like sometimes I dress, for example, in Afghani clothes, right? And it looks a bit funny. Moroccan clothes doesn't look completely awful weird in Jordan, but it doesn't really fit in. It's not something like normal, right? Because I'm not preaching to Jordanians, right? And when I go to the West, generally speaking, I wear a thobe, long shirt, might wear a jubba, etc. Might wear like a neat Moroccan thing, because I'm usually giving da'wah. Right? I remember I was in San Francisco, and I was in this coffee shop, and this nun asked me. She said, "So what are you?" Right? So she looked at me. So obviously you're dressed in a certain way, and so we got talking about religion, etc. And so that's a useful thing. That's an intended thing, right? It fulfills certain goals. But if I'm not trying to do that, why am I doing that? Right? So in Jordan, you say, "Well, I don't really care." That's just I don't really care, right? That's just how I'm dressing, and so you can be like that. It's not, as long as it doesn't harm anybody, it's fine. But when I go to the West, it's an active da'wah, right? It's an active da'wah. But if you're not intending to give out active da'wah all the time, then why would you dress like that? Right? Why would you do that? Okay, or whether you should dress like a scholar or an average Muslim. Right? So, for example, again in Jordan, certain things that scholar would wear, certain things that normal Muslim would wear. So you dress, for example, in a turban, in a jubba, and I ask you a question, and you're like, "Yeah, actually, I'm not a scholar." So why are you dressed like a scholar then? I don't get it. And I remember I was in one country, and I saw a man wearing a turban, so I assumed he was an alim. And I asked him, he said, "No, I'm just a IT guy." I said, "Okay, then why are you wearing a turban?" I don't get it. Because to me, living in Jordan for over a decade, that's a message. You're telling me something, but someone else is not. Whereas, for example, in Turkey, it's quite normal for a normal religious Muslim to wear a turban. Little kids wear a turban. It's not something. I'm personally a big advocate of wearing a Muslim-looking hat. Right? So wearing a hat, I look at you and say, "Oh, I look at you, and I realize I think you're a Muslim." Right? I find that is almost a statement to oneself that one is a practicing Muslim. So importantly, we mentioned that clothes are a statement to others, statement to yourself as well. Right? You're speaking to yourself about what you are. That's quite important. The one is a practicing Muslim, and that is also a way of giving emotional and religious support to sisters in the West who are having a hard time keeping the hijab. So you go to work and you wear a hat, even though you don't have to. So the sister who's not wearing a hijab, she looks at you and says, "Yeah, you know what? This guy's got some guts. Why don't I do, like, he doesn't even have to do that. I should wear a hijab. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to be a little bit odd, right? We have to be comfortable with being a little bit odd, right? We shouldn't try and be odd, but sometimes, the cost of doing what Allah wants makes us look a bit strange. And it's always been the case in the East and the West, wherever you want to be. Okay, do we have any questions? Do you know how it would apply in the Hanafi madhab? Previous question, which is, I don't know. The general rule, Fatima, don't ask a brain surgeon about cancer, because they don't know. Then it's not a speciality. So each madhab is a speciality. It's generally, if you find somebody who's not a specialist in Hanafi school, so I'm not a specialist in Hanafi school, then I won't answer the question. Sometimes I answer questions online in the Hanafi school because they're checked by Shaykh Faraz Rabbani, who's a Hanafi, and he can correct if I'm wrong, right? But otherwise I don't know. Amr Khan, what is the ruling if you are traveling and decide to fast, but change your mind before Zawal? Is that fine? Is it better to fast if it's not difficult during travel? So in the Shafi'i school, if you are a traveler before Fajr, then you do not have to fast. okay, then you do not have to fast. In which case you can change your mind in the middle of the fast. That's fine. Anything before or after, it doesn't matter when it is. So you're not obliged to fast today, and so you don't have to fast. There we go. Now, if you're a traveler after Fajr, meaning you've left your house and you've left your city, and then but Fajr has already come in, and then you become a traveler after Fajr, then you're obliged to fast, and you can't change your mind after that. However, we mentioned that there's it before in previous sessions. There is a dispensation, the position of Imam Muzani, of the Shafi'is, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, that becoming a traveler in the middle of the fast does allow you to break the fast. So in the scenario when it's extremely difficult, it's very hot, and it's really hard, and whatever difficult scenario, and it's a very long fast, then you could take that dispensation and say, well, it's just too difficult, and given the fact that I've become a traveler now, I can break my fast. Okay, does that answer your question, Ahmed? Amr, does that answer your question? Okay. Okay, do we have any other questions? So I have a question for how many people are here? How many people do we have today? So Muhammad Shaduli says, how do we make an intention to fast after suhoor? So in the Shafi'i school, for an obligatory fast, such as in Ramadan, an intention to fast after suhoor would not count. Meaning after Fajr has come in, it would not count. What you would do in that scenario is you would do something that's called imsak, which is not eating, and not eating or drinking, and you just remain the day not eating or drinking, but the fast wouldn't count, and you'd have to repeat that fast. All right. So when would that happen? For example, excuse me. In the scenario where, for example, you didn't know that tomorrow's Ramadan, right? So, for example, you were told, "Oh, Tuesday's Eid, mashallah, Tuesday's Eid, Tuesday's Eid, Tuesday's Eid," and you go to Fajr to pray Fajr in the morning, and everyone tells you, "Oh, actually, it's still Ramadan." You're like, "Really? I thought it was Eid." So then you had no intention of fasting the next day because you thought it was Eid, and it turned out it's still Ramadan. So what would you do in that scenario? Say, well, can't eat or drink now. Even if you ate or drank or whatever you did, you can't eat or drink. You had no intention of fasting, so it doesn't count to fast today. And you would just remain the rest of the day not eating or drinking or anything. And you would have to make up that day later on. Right? That's for an obligatory fast. For a Sunnah fast, for example, fasting Mondays and Thursdays, etc., or fasting the 6 days of Shawwal, what you would do is simply before Zawal, before noon, you'd intend. So, for example, the day after Eid, you're going to go and visit your friend. So come round for breakfast. You calling him up? No answer. Calling up? No answer. Something odd. Call up his friend. You say, "Oh no, he had to go to hospital. Something happened." Wow, subhanallah. Inshallah, he's okay. Go visit him in hospital. He's alright. It's just thing, whatever. Something happened. But basically, no breakfast, no brunch. So you realize, oh, okay, that was all I was going to do today, and I haven't eaten or drink yet after Fajr, and it's before Dhuhr. So what do? I just now intend, I am now fasting. So that's on the proviso that you did not eat or drink before that. Is that clear, Muhammad? Okay. So a question for the four of you that are here. How long is Eid? How many days is Eid? Muhammad says, can we not intend as per Hanafis? I don't know what the Hanafis do exactly. Hanafi. So how many days is Eid? Muhammad, Amr, Fatima. How many days does Eid last for? Eid al-Fitr lasts for 1 day. Muhammad says 1 day. Amr, what do you think? Amr, are you there? Fatima, are you there? So Walid asked the question, do people who live in places with longer nights get more reward in Laylatul Qadr? Depends how much sincerity they have, Walid. So some people live very short lives and they're very sincere. And nobody remembers them, but they're closer to Allah. And many people, they live many years, and everybody knows about them, but they're not as close to Allah as others. So our religion is about quality, not about quantity. Right? Right? So good. So Muhammad says correctly, the answer is 1 day. Right? So what does that mean? Right? That means that if you have fast to make up, um, from Ramadan, then the obligation to make them up starts on the second day of Eid, what we normally consider the second day of Eid, which is not Eid anymore. Right? So that means that, when the third day of Eid passes, these days have really gone past, and we should be careful to make them up as soon as possible. Excuse me. Because time has already gone past, and we're already liable for not making these, that risk of dying and not making these fast up. That's number one. Number two, that also means it's valid to fast your Shawwal on the second day of Eid. Right? So for somebody who, for example, I don't have a family around, I'm not going to see some friends for Eid, and that's about it. We can see them at night. Then fast on the second day. It's fine. Fast on the second day and the third day and the fourth day. These are days that are sunnah, that are actually sunnah to fast, right? For 6 days of Shawwal. Okay. Any other questions? Another question: when should you fast? When should you start your Eid? Should you go by the country that you're ethnically related to, or should you go by your local mosque? Okay, why Walid? Why your local mosque? Why your local mosque? Okay. Should you always go with community? Should you always follow your local community? Because isn't it better to calculate the days where one lives? Correct. In the Shafi'i school, in the Shafi'i school, Eid and Ramadan are local things and not world things. So that's one good reason. But there's another thing. So it's important. So I want to, for the sake of community, I want to go with my local mosque. Can I always do that? Can I just always go with my local mosque, whatever? Can you just say, well, community? Who can think of a scenario when you should not do that? Good. I do it if they follow the same fiqh as me, for example, as I follow Hanafi. Okay, so if they're Shafi'i, you shouldn't follow them. For example, next, there's you're in your local area, the biggest mosque, the mosque around is a Yemeni mosque that will Hana Shafi'i, or they're, for example, I don't know, Moroccan, so they're Maliki or something. You shouldn't follow your local mosque. Who can think of a scenario when you should not follow your local mosque? When you should break away from the community. You say that, yeah, the community is doing this, but this is actually, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Muhammad, Awi, Fatima, where's Amr gone? Amr, are you still there? Fatima, you still there? So Walid says, well, if they're different madhab, then no. Depends if you where you're traveling, not quite. The question here is, some people say it's Eid, some people say it's not Eid. And my local mosque says Eid. Or my local mosque says it's not Eid. Should I always just do what my local mosque says or not? So one answer is yes, always do what they say. Another answer is do what they say if they follow the same madhab as you. All right. So what do you think we should do? So if their opinion is a minority, and so that's not a very accurate term, minority. So if you say, for example, the Hanbalis are in a minority, right? So something we're saying minority opinion, maybe an opinion that's adopted by such few people that's almost negligible. This means it's called shadh, right? Shadh is adopted by one of the tabi'een, and we don't really know why he said it and what he really meant. It's called shadh, right? As opposed to a minority meaning not the majority, right? And so the answer is that, number one, if the local mosque follows one of the former madhahib, and you feel confident that they know what they're doing, then you should go with them for the sake of, for the maslahah of community, because they're doing something that may be right in the eyes of Allah, meaning it's coming from sound scholarly sources. They're following one of the former madhahib, and there's a benefit in following it because it brings community together. So you're doing the good thing, right? However, if, for example, they're Shi'i or the Salafi or I don't know what, then you have to look into it a little bit more, right? So, for example, the Salafi, okay, what are the, going to ask them, go ask the Imam, you're saying it's Eid on whatever day it is, Thursday. Why do you say it's Eid on Thursday? Say, oh, because of this hadith. Say, oh, okay. So this is a person doing his own, he's basically making up the deen as he goes along, based his own understanding of Quran and Sunnah. He's not relying on the tradition, and so this is dangerous. And so, but you should check and say, well, because they say no, this is the fatwa of Shaykh so and so who's following, for example, the Hanbali school or Maliki school or Shafi'i school or this, and you get a picture from this person that they're generally, yes, they're relying on authorities. This is something reliable. Then you should go with that, right? And so, as for saying, well, if they're Hanafi, I'm not going to do that. That's dangerous, right? That's a bit dangerous because you can divide communities based on madhab. Is not such a good idea, given that both madhahib are correct, all the madhahib are correct. Right? But the issue is when somebody's doing something that honestly I don't know about. This might be wrong, it might be wrong. It's their own thing, and it's not going. Then it's not relying on an authority, not relying on one of the four schools. And when you ask them, they kind of have a wishy-washy answer. Then you don't do that. You say, well, I prefer to find out something that's based on one of the four schools and do that. Even if that means breaking my fast on another day, even if it means etc. Okay, we have to stop here because there is a live session now. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.